ABS, Asaase Breakfast Show.
Welcome back. It's 7:50 on the clock in the studio, and you're listening to the Asaase Breakfast Show with me, the Rainmaker. So earlier this morning, we had been talking about something that's, totally befuddled me. My mind boggles at the thought of 1,300 ECG containers going missing. We're joined on the line by the Honourable Minister for Energy and Green Transition, and also the Member of Parliament for the people of Yape Kasogu constituency, Mr. John Jinapor. Good morning, sir, and thank you very much for your time on the ABS.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, it's quite an alarming revelation. How did you come to find out about the 1,300 or so containers that are missing?
Well, during the transition, I was made aware, actually the energy side of transition, that 3,000 containers were stuck at the Tema Port due to the inability of the ECG to clear those containers. And so, on assumption of office as minister, I visited, and a new figure was given to me as 2,500. So, between 3,000 2,500. So I inquired why the change in figure. Mm-hmm. And I was told that some private companies have been contracted before we assumed office to clear the containers. And so I felt that we should investigate that. But even more importantly, I thought that the committee would recommend how we can get the containers cleared. Surprisingly, when the committee submitted this report, they indicated that contrary to the claim that 2,500 containers were at the port when we took over, indeed 1,300 of them had been moved away even before we assumed office.
Oh, wow.
And so that is the state of affairs, and we want to investigate and go to the bottom of the whereabouts of those 1,300 containers.
Now, this is very disturbing revelation. First of all, you were told during transition there were 3,000, and that number then was revised to 2,500 because of a private company that had been asked to start clearing the containers. And now finding that more than 1,300 of those are missing. I mean, it's a little confusing because the little I know of the Tema Port is that nothing moves without the necessary clearance and documentation. Has this private company that's supposed to be helping with the clearing said anything with regards to these 1,300 containers?
Two private companies.
Okay, two companies. Okay.
Two. So I was not part of the investigative team. Mm-hmm. I, as minister, established a committee to do the work for me.
Okay.
The report has been submitted. The next step is simple. Let the law enforcement agencies, especially the National Investigative Bureau, get into this matter quickly.
Okay.
I'm sure that will be the right way to unravel the whereabouts of these containers. And so I've already written asking national security to get involved. Like you said, containers have serial numbers, they have tracking numbers. You cannot just lift a container out of the harbor. Mm-hmm. Is it the case that somebody legitimately lifted them out of the harbor but did not bring it to ECG? Or is it that ECG received them and it got missing with ECG? Or is it that there's some documentation challenges? It's only when we investigate this, because I had given the committee some limited timelines. And in fact, their main focus for me was to determine how we could even clear their containers. Mm-hmm. Now the next step is to do some criminal investigation into the whereabouts of this more than 1,300 containers.
Okay. Now, this is heartwarming to know that there are steps being taken to, as it were, investigate and unravel how these containers came to be unaccounted for. But if we go back to when you assumed the office, I recall that you stated on the floor of Parliament, and I'm just going to paraphrase what you said, that there were, at the time, of course, the number that you were given was 3,000, and there was more than 1.5 billion cedis demurrage cost. How has that aspect of the ECG wares from cables to transformers been dealt with?
Well, first of all, even the difference in the 1,300 has come to me as a shock.
Mm-hmm.
All along, I had believed that between 2,500 and 3,000 containers were stuck at the port, based on the information they gave me. Mm-hmm. So my primary focus as minister was that we couldn't continue to incur such demurrage, because 1.5 billion demurrage, what it means is that it will keep compounding if you don't do anything about it.
True.
And so my thinking all along was that how can we prevent this demurrage from escalating? Only to be told that contrary to the information that was given to me when we were assuming office, those containers were indeed not there.
Mm.
And so that is the bottom line of the whole issue. And like you said, the solution is to launch criminal investigation. I just hope, and let me make this clear, that when people begin to be dragged before the law enforcement agencies, when people begin to face the law courts, nobody will complain that we are witch hunting. Because I'm seeing a lot of propaganda. I don't get worried about it. At the end of the day, when we get to the bottom of this matter, we will know who and which group took the containers and when. These are contracts that were executed before we even assumed office. Mm-hmm. These companies were contracted before we assumed office. But we are in office now, and we have to deal with this situation. And I tell you, we will get to the bottom of this matter.
Well, that makes me very happy because, the power sector or the energy sector is a critical part of what drives our economy. And the provision of electrical power to homes and industries depends on these equipment that are in these containers. So for 1,300 of them to go AWOL is very disturbing. Now, did you personally visit the port upon assumption of office?
I didn't get your question well.
Did you personally visit the port after you assumed office?
Yes, I personally visited the port as minister.
And at the time, were you able to? Did you have ocular evidence of that these are the containers?
In fact, that is why I even constituted the investigative committee. But when I visited the port and I was getting another figure, it kind of prompted me that, no, look, do a thorough job on this matter. Because at the port, there was no way as minister I could individually count containers and determine the exact number. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was not going to be possible.
Yeah.
But once you had a committee, then the committee had about 2 months to reconcile all the figures and to count the containers based on their serial numbers and unique numbers. And that is why they submitted that report to me. So if I had left it at the port and believed what I was told at the time, we wouldn't have gotten to this level.
Mm. Right. And evidently, there is something that needs to be unraveled. Of course, the investigation will uncover the whereabouts, we hope, and it should also help us know whether this is just the containers are still at the port and just being moved to a different terminal or something, but we just need to know when this will be found. Have you given yourself a timeline within which all of this is likely to be concluded?
I intend meeting the NIB director today. And in fact, that is why during the first day the report was presented to me, I was a bit careful. I didn't want to draw conclusions. I didn't want to immediately accuse anybody because the investigation would determine. Like you said, were they moved to some terminal? Were they stolen? Were they due to bad record keeping? Is it the case that somebody cleared them from the port but failed to deliver them to ECG? What were the checks and balances? I'm sure the next phase of this investigation would reveal that. I was surprised when some people try to politicize it, because whether NDC or MPP, containers are not supposed to be stolen, or they don't have to get missing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just unfortunate that some people thought that it's an avenue for the usual politics.
Yeah.
But these are state property, and all we are seeking is to trace them and retrieve them. And if there is any crime, whoever is perpetrated that crime is held liable. It's as simple as that.
Mm. Now, from my layman's point of view, I'm wondering why, in the first place, the ECG ended up incurring that level of demurrage in excess of 1.5 billion cedis. Were you able to establish why the containers were not cleared in good time?
That is in the committee report, and I'll make it public.
Okay.
And it's so worrying. And if you look at the losses, people ought to be held responsible at ECG, and people will be held responsible. I'll push for that, because ECG decides that they will sign a contract where once you present a bill of lading, they pay you off.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes the duty of ECG to clear the containers. Then ECG decides that they will collapse the procurement directorate, which is key, very key, and put it under the estates department, and put the manager for the estates department as the head of estates and procurement. It's not done anywhere. So right from day one, somebody set to rig the system. But even more worrying, they had containers, say, with cables. ECG is unable to clear those containers. And yet they proceed to award new contracts for the supply of same cables. Pay for them. The containers get to the port, and they are unable to clear that as well. And it continues to incur demurrage. This is unacceptable, and somebody must be held liable.
Interesting revelations. So, I mean, these are orders that were meant to bring in supplies to help bolster the work of ECG. Is it at all possible that what you're investigating at the moment may have a direct correlation with the state of power at the moment? And power, I mean electricity supply, because in recent days we've had quite a number of power outages, and had some of our listeners commenting on the show about outages pretty much across the country, here in Accra.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because my daily report shows that we've not been shedding load, except the day before yesterday when we had a temporary high hitch for some few hours, because Talo decided to shut the pipeline over months and more than a year of unpaid gas supplied.
Okay.
The bills were not paid, so they shut it. And so we had to scramble to get some money to get them to open the pipeline. Fortunately, they've opened the pipeline. But if you have over 2,500 containers stuck and not utilized, it means that you are not improving the grid, you are not improving the distribution lines, and the current system gets obsolete because demand keeps increasing. And so it has a direct correlation with the delivery of power. It's not enough to generate the power. You have to transmit and evacuate it, and you have to distribute it. And the problems we are seeing has to do with the distribution level. And that is why you see that one particular area goes off, another area goes up. And that keeps creating a lot of problems for all of us. So I think that it's critical. And if we do not get these items out and inject them into the distribution system, the supply and delivery of power would have significant impacts.
On the matter of the gas supply, and the indebtedness to the providers of the gas. How well are we doing on that front? Is the intervention from a day ago enough?
For instance, ENI alone is old. At the end of the year, we should be paying about $1 billion.
Dollars or
500
cedis?
million. Yes, 500 million on account of the previous government's inability to pay for gas supply. And so the letters of credit established and backed by the World Bank has been drawn to virtually zero. And that amount is 500.
Okay.
So we have to pay that now. And so this is gas that was supplied, power was produced and sold, but it was not paid. We have to pay that now. The same with Tallow. Over 100 million, we have to pay. The same with NGAS. We've just paid 37 million. Or is it 35 million? And so we are doing our bit to address the challenge. But as you can see, it's really difficult.
But it might still be difficult, but would you say we're making a decent amount of progress, or we're nowhere near out of the
We're
woods?
making some quite significant progress. Very difficult, though. Very difficult, though, but we're making progress.
Okay. What can you, what sort of assurances can you give Ghanaians as far as the energy is concerned, supply of electricity?
We are seeing some improvements because in Kumasi areas, for instance, when we took over, they had serious challenges. We've been able to change the transformer from a 66 MVA to a 146 MVA.
Mm-hmm.
So what it means is that the overloading is being curtailed. The next step is to work on the workers and put in place some automated systems so that when an area goes off, they can quickly move in and restore power. Mm. More often than not, I get messages, my area is off. I check the grid is working. I check with ECG and they say there's either a cable fault, a transformer fault, there's a trip. I think that we should inherit such a system. And so we have to do whatever we can to put the men on standby and move in quickly to rectify whatever challenges that comes up. Because challenges are bound to come up, but the response time ought to be very swift. So I thought that if you just set up a system and put me on the system, my deputy, director power, and some key people, what that system does is that it's a SCADA system. Whenever an area goes off, it pops up, and you know that a particular area is off, so that we can all together track it.
Okay. Now, if my memory serves me right, the President, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, during the State of the Nation address, said that the intermittent, power outages would be a thing of the past come middle of March. We're about 3 or 4 days away from the end of the month of March. Is it time to review or revise that timeline the President mentioned? And to what time?
We have adequate supply of power.
Okay.
And so I think the President is right.
Okay.
They're not sharing load. We've been supplied enough to feed the nation and export the rest. Mm-hmm. So that is done. As far as I'm concerned, from the top, there's enough supply of power.
Okay.
If somebody's area, there's some localized outages, we would want to know quickly and resolve that. And that happens across the world.
Okay.
So the President is right when he says that the power supply situation will stabilize.
Okay. Now, Mr. Jinapor, the challenges of ECG recovering debt, and I know that in previous times there has been an attempt, I think even under the leadership of Mr. Samuel Dubik Mahama, there was a period where first they went cashless to ensure that all payments were going straight to bank. They also had this thing where the entire ECG team would pretty much go out on a storm to collect debts. How is the debt situation being managed?
ECG debt currently is more than 80 billion cedis. So today, as we speak, we'll require about 80 billion cedis in order to be able to pay off the debt. And that is where we are now.
And what steps are being taken to address it?
We have put in place some new measures. ECG used to keep about 500. View that can only keep up to about 250 million. And that will be tied to their performance. We're strictly enforcing the cash waterfall mechanism. We're setting up a fuel account where some money will be paid into the fuel account to secure the supply of fuel. We're also engaging the IPPs to renegotiate the terms and determine whether we can get some better flexible terms. The tariff misalignment also ought to be looked at. SOEs in particular, and I said that yesterday, consumers alone, domestic consumers alone cannot pay for the lights supplied. The government agencies and the state-owned enterprises should budget and pay. I've pleaded with the president to give us the permission. If they do not pay, we'll cut them off. Because you in your house, when you do not pay, you are cut off. So the SOEs and they make revenue. If this is not free, they should prepare and pay for that.
Okay. I mean, these are pretty decent plans. In terms of the tariff misalignment, how are you planning on addressing that? Of course, you're negotiating for your fuel is priced in dollars, your delivery of your power from your IPPs and the gas and everything is coming in dollars. But you're selling to me and every Ghanaian in Ghana cedis. How are you planning on fixing that misalignment?
I will start the PURC to look at that. The PURC would do some engagement in the coming days and they would assess the whole situation and determine the way forward. So I'm patiently waiting for the PURC to determine the next level of action. Okay. And then we can all take it up from there.
Finally, in certain jurisdictions, zoning helps for power distribution and tariff management. And what I mean by that is, in some areas, you might find a light industrial complex within a residential enclave. There are people who have businesses that require using power from their homes, or somebody puts up a business in an estate or in an area where largely is residential. How are we planning on ensuring that we're able to disambiguate those who are using power for commercial purposes so they pay the appropriate tariffs from those who are using power purely for residential purposes?
And normally when you go to apply for a meter, you're supposed to come and assess the premise. The premise will tell whether it's industrial, commercial, or domestic. And the norm is that normally you give a rebate to industrial and commercial so they can create wealth, grow the economy, employ people, and they will then get to go and pay their domestic light bills. And so we've been working around that. We've given ECG some guidelines. And I'm sure that over the next few months, they will make some progress. As we also improve with some private sector participation, we are hopeful that the revenue collection would increase significantly so that we can pay the IPPs and pay the fuel suppliers.
There's also, I'm not too sure, the matter of private participation in ECG's operations. How much progress has been made from the committee that's supposed to be reviewing?
I'll be receiving the report next week.
Next week, okay.
We will then formulate a cabinet position paper.
Okay.
And then we can take it to cabinet for adoption. Once we get that, we'll conduct an open, transparent, competitive process so that we'll make progress.
Okay. I mean, your portfolio is not just energy, but also for the green transition. And there are some areas where you'd see that people have been able to incorporate solar power. Oh, we just lost the Minister for Energy on there. You're listening to the Asaase Breakfast Show. Just a moment ago, we were talking to Mr. John Jinapor. He's the Minister for Energy and Green Transition and the MP for Yape Kasogu. I just wanted to find out whether, the issue of net metering and and whether we are in a position to start that, and if people were able to make the right investment, whether the state would have any support for that sort of thing. Well, but that brings us to 8:15 on the Asaase Breakfast Show. More conversations coming your way, and we will be taking a trip to Kumasi where we talk to Jonathan Ofori on the rampant attacks on Momo agents. How do we curb that menace? How do we improve the safety of Momo vendors across the country? And how do we ensure that perpetrators of these heinous crimes are caught and brought to book? Later on this morning, we'll be taking you on a journey into understanding the kidney disease burden in the country. We started that discussion last week with Dr. Teddy Totime. This week, we will have Dr. Akosua Asomini, who's a nephrologist and a physician specialist at the renal unit at Kolebu Teaching Hospital, bringing us some education in our Health Today segment. And don't forget the story of Odomankoma Ochremapra, who's been living a life, his career journey as a fanti drama musician and a performing artist. We're bringing you that up close conversation with him. Well. I but that's one of my own personal favorites.